Hi, today's episode we have Swami Aatmo Neerav. He's an Osho disciple and has been living and working at Osho Tapoban in Nepal since the last 16 years. But Neerav was a model and a TV presenter. After becoming an Osho sannyasin at the early age of 16, he has been working and meditating under the guidance of Swami Anand Arun, an early Osho disciple and an international meditation teacher. Today, Neerav travels and facilitates meditation retreats in Nepal and abroad, sharing Osho's vision and meditation. So welcome Neerav in today's episode. Let's start with the favorite topic for most people, which is free love, dancing inside the Osho ashram, and of course the infamous orgies that we all know about, that people associate actually with the Osho ashram. And of course, you know what? So we need to hear from the horse's mouth. For all our listeners, I'm sure they're all going to be, glued in to listen to this. Because the latest hit documentary series, Wild Wild Country, that was directed by Brother MacLean and Chapman Way, was so popular, and there was so much of, this whole cultural conversation has not happened the way the movement had happened. Of course, times were different. But I'd really like to know from you and share with us your journey, till 16 and now this current avatar. What is it that, of course, you did mention to me that your parents were also Osho followers, but we all, when we grow up in a setup at home, we do choose to become individuals on our own and we don't follow what our parents do most times. What made you follow this? And of course, you cannot get away today without telling me about the orgies also. Welcome.
Thank you, Mohua. That was a very interesting introduction. Many things that you said in your intro, I would definitely would like to talk about them. But before that, as you said, my journey before I was 16 was basically like it was just like everybody else's journey. I was in my high school, and I had just finished my high school. And then at that time, my parents were very much influenced by Osho. They were not followers, they were not disciples, but they used to listen to Osho's discourses, and I still remember having two huge pictures of Osho in our living room. These were two mounted pictures. So my dad and my mom both were very much inspired by his vision, by what he used to say. I basically thought, when I used to look at those pictures, and when you see your parents following somebody, I used to tell them that, I used to look at his pictures, and he was very flamboyant and charismatic and with all his, paraphernalia. So I said, like, how can this be a spiritual man? How can this be like we know what spiritual people are supposed to look like, or religious figures are supposed to look like. So I also had that idea, and I said that he looks very egoistic. He looks very proud, and I was in that kind of mindset. And then what happened was, when I was in my high school, my parents asked me one day. It was October, and in October we have a very huge festival in Nepal. It's the Dasera, so it's a big holiday of like 10, 12 days, and we have to visit our relatives. Our relatives are coming over to our house, so it's a lot of chaos. So I like being this teenager and wanting to be cool and everything. So I said, when my parents asked me, there is a meditation retreat happening in a forest, would you like to go to that? So just to be cool, just to avoid the whole festival, I said yes, I want to go. And then I came to Tapoban. I came for the retreat, and the very first day I came here, there was lots of dancing happening, as you were saying. It was the evening white robe, and there was a wild music going on. Lots of young people, lots of energy, and everybody was dancing. And suddenly, I felt at home. It was a click. It was an instant click for me, and I felt like I was at home. And I joined in. I didn't really think much about it. I didn't give a lot of thought into it, and I just joined in. And the more I meditated, the more I did different groups, the more I did different sessions, I went deeper and deeper and deeper into this whole process. And I started feeling very connected with Osho. I used to look at his videos and I used to say to myself, wow, this guy is so intelligent. The things that he says, so progressive, and coming out from a spiritual mouth, or coming out from a godman as he was, I thought that he was really cool, really rebellious. He was an iconoclast, and that really hit me. And and I also liked the way he carried himself. Because most of the times in Hindu, when you go to Hindu gurus and Babajis, they're not very, how do you say it? Not very clean. They're not very aesthetic to look at. But when you look at Osho, everything was very crisp. The way he moved his hands, the way he was talking, the words that he said. There was not even one word that was he was just blabbering. Everything made sense, and he was so articulate and so intelligent and so present. And when you looked into his eyes, so these are the physical things, and of course there is the energy that is behind all of these things. Whenever there is an enlightened master, so that really hit my youth.
16 is very young, Neerav.
Yes, yes.
That is what amazes me. With 16, you're really navigating life through all your emotions.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out about yourself. I mean, I don't know. I mean, till 25, I probably didn't even know what is it that I wanted. So, at 16 to have that sort of clarity, do you think that it may have been a little bit of a brainwash also for you?
No, not at all. Because I still am, and I was very, I wouldn't take things at face value, and I wouldn't take things. I'm not superstitious, and I'm not. I really like to understand things, and I really look at things very openly. So no, there was no brainwash. And from my parents' side, also, of course, they were inspired by his vision. They listened to his discourses, but they never
Forced you.
Forced me or asked me to come and listen to them. And even when I used to say, this guy looks very proud, I don't like him, and they never said anything. And I think that also created a space for me to explore on my own. I
So
mean,
I think
if
you've
they had
raised something
ever,
so important, Neerav, that, when parents sometimes try and
yeah,
control you, you want to go against it. And when they allow you to do
yes,
what
exactly.
you want to do, you find that it is so much more easier to embrace. And I think you've said something, you've just said words of wisdom for the listeners, because I know I have a whole lot of very young listeners and parents and mothers, because somewhere mothers and fathers. And, we try and force children to follow a certain method that we've tried and tested, and we
Mm,
think that should be right for the other individual.
mm,
And invariably that's when the rebellion begins. Anything that's seamlessly,
exactly, exactly.
anything that's seamlessly given to us, I think we embrace it really from a very, very deep level. um, but
Yeah.
Neerav, you were a model, and that's a different world altogether. TV presenter, I mean, that's like glamour. And this is amazing because it's like two sides of the personality.
So even this thing, the modeling and the glamour world, that came after I took sannyas. After the 7 days, I got initiated. I decided to get initiated. I called my parents and I told them I'm going to become a sannyasin, and they were like, "Are you sure about that?" And and I said yes. And they were not sannyasins. They were not disciples. So they came to support me. They just came for the event. It's and Osho sannyas is a little different from how sannyas has been down the ages in how Hindu tradition or Buddhist tradition follows sannyas.
Tell us, what is it different?
The difference is that we are not required to renounce anything, and we are only asked to add one thing in our lives, and that is meditation and awareness. And Osho gives us all the freedom to explore life, to experience it in all its colors, and just try to be aware. Osho says, make mistakes, but don't repeat those mistakes. Make new mistakes. So that is what Osho Sannyas is all about. He coined it as Zorba the Buddha, which means there was a Greek writer called Nikos Kazantzakis, and he wrote a book called Zorba the Greek. And Osho said that when I read that book, there is a character in the book called Zorba who is so full of life, who is having lots of fun, who is making lots of love, celebrating, drinking, and everything. Very colorful person. And then he said that just keeping Zorba alone, he is incomplete. There is so much in him, but he's incomplete. And when you look at Gautam the Buddha, Siddhartha Gautam, he's so much in silence, so much inside himself, so much in meditation. But at the same time, when you just look at him, he is also incomplete. So I want that my sannyasins should be a combination of Zorba and the Buddha, meditation and celebration, awareness and all the colors of life. So that's how Osho coined his sannyasin. So that's what Osho's sannyas is all about. You don't have to renounce anything. You don't have to leave anything. There is only one thing that you need to add into your life, and that is meditation and awareness. And whatever is non-essential, as you meditate, it will fall down on its own. And whatever is essential will remain with you, and you will grow into that. So that was what is Osho's sannyas.
You need to repeat that for the listeners, Neerav. That when you meditate, that the things that is not needed in you will fall off, and the things that's needed in you will remain inside you.
And it will remain in such a way that you will grow. Your growth is guaranteed.
It's like that tree, right? The foundation needs to be strong for all the branches to grow in, and for the birds to come in and be there, and for the fruits to flower, so all of that. Yeah, it's very, very interesting what you said. But there is so much of negativity also involved, because I think as a society, free love is not something that the culture that you are from. I mean, and I have to tell you this is my first podcast with Nepal. And I'm so honored to have you today.
I'm equally honored to be the first podcast with you from Nepal. I'm equally honored. I've been through some of your podcasts, and they're very interesting people that you bring together. So I'm equally honored, Mohua.
Thank you so much. Nepal remains one of my favorite places on earth. I love Nepal. I just love, because as an Indian, when you go there, we're so connected culturally. We're alike,
Yes.
And to me, Nepal is the mountains and the people and the mala, the clothing, the art. There's so much there. So, coming back to love and free love, I'd really like our listeners to understand a little bit more, and how much truth is there in the orgies that people know about the Rajneesh
Okay, I'll tell you an incident, before I move on to this topic of free love. I'd like to tell you an incident. So there was a journalist that came to our ashram, and he was very, I was taking him around, and he was very curious. He was like trying to find something. He was constantly trying to look into the windows. When you're taking him around, he's trying to look under the bridge. He's trying to see. I didn't understand it at first. And then later he opened himself. He said, so I've heard about this orgies, this underground orgies that you guys have. Where are those orgies? And I just jokingly replied to him, I also came in search of that, and I'm still searching, but I've not found that yet. So I would like to, so this whole thing about Osho, as Osho was coined, Osho was famously known as the sex guru. So why was he called the sex guru? We have to really go into this, really look at it very carefully. So what happened was, in the 1970s, imagine that time, and imagine India of that time, very Hindu or very religious, very conventional. So at that time, Osho started freely speaking about sex in his lectures. So for a godman, how godmen are worshipped in India, for how sadhus are worshipped in India, nobody expects a godman to speak about sex. Nobody expects a godman to, now they do, because Osho started. So, when Osho was talking about sex, what he was trying to say is that the whole religion, all these religions, the society, our traditions, our norms, has really suppressed sex and has taken it behind the curtain. Everybody's having sex. How are we born? We are all born out of sex. But when we talk about sex, when we, try to openly have a discussion about sex, everybody is hushed. When a child talks about sex, or when there is something on the television that relates to sex, the channels are changed. Nobody tells children how people are born. Nobody really likes to talk about it. Even adults in a room, nobody really talks about sex. And especially in Osho's times, in the 1970s, it was a very suppressed subject. Everybody was doing it. Everybody was born out of it. But we were looking at it in a very diseased way, like it was something very dirty, like it was like talking about sex, or like accepting it, embracing it was looked upon as very, it was not looked upon as someone from a good family would do. So this was a great hypocrisy, and because of this hypocrisy, so much of the bizarre things were born out of it. When something becomes diseased, when something starts rotting, so many ugly things come out of it. That's why look at our society today. So much of rape is happening. So much of pedophilia is happening. All of these things, all of these sicknesses, why they are happening is because we have suppressed sex and we have not accepted it as it is. We have not looked upon it. In ancient India, we had Kama Sutra. In ancient India, we had something like something so beautiful, like science of making love. Our temples. If you go to Khajuraho, the whole temple is made. It glorifies sex in such a beautiful way of looking at it. But down the ages, we have made it look very dirty. We have made it look very ugly. And this has created lots of sickness in the society, and it's still there. So that's why Osho spoke very courageously against it. And he said that all that he was saying is that, like when you're hungry, you eat food. So you don't really think about it all the time. Just like that, it's a very basic need that the body needs sex as well. So why do you constantly think about it? Why do you constantly, in our minds, we're constantly thinking about sex. We are constantly imagining things. But outside, we try to show that we are so pious, we are so holy, we are infallible. But that's not the truth. So all that Osho was trying to do was he exposed this hypocrisy. He exposed, there are so many celibate sadhus and priests and pandits who say that they have never had sex, but behind the curtains, behind the walls, they're raping young people, young children. And this has been happening down the ages. So much of sexual exploitation, especially by religions. So this is what Osho spoke against. And because of that, because of speaking this truth, he was given the title the sex guru. And second, he also had to pay the price. Eventually, he was given poison, and he died out of poison. But he was ready. He knew that he would be killed, murdered one day, but he was ready to pay the price. And that's why he was labeled the sex guru, because he also wrote a very popular book called From Sex to Superconsciousness. But when a book came out, spoken by a spiritual leader, everybody was shocked. Everybody was like, how can you have sex as a title on a book cover in the India of 80s? So this was a big issue. This became a really, and that made Osho very infamous, but at the same time, it also made him very famous. So when he wrote this book, Sex to Superconsciousness, everybody looked towards sex, but the title meant sex to superconsciousness. He was trying to lead people to superconsciousness, but nobody looked at superconsciousness. They looked only at sex. So this also shows how sick our minds were. And because we couldn't see the superconsciousness, we only saw sex. So this spoke about the society that we were living in and we are still living in. That's why he was
so
called
agree
the
with
sex
you,
guru.
actually, Neerav, on this, because I think India is we were so progressive. I mean, we have the Kama Sutra. We're known as the land of Kama Sutra. There is the Khajuraho temples, rightly you said. I think it's about the invasion that we've had, and we've tried to follow, a very, very Victorian culture where
Yes.
I think they have made sex to be a really bad thing. And
Yes. I would like to mention this, Mohua. Until just 20, 30 years ago, women in Nepal used to bathe without being covered. Their breasts were never covered. We used to have public bathing areas, and and women freely bathed without wearing a blouse or a bra or covering their breasts, and nobody found it vulgar. Nobody even looked at it. It was so natural, it was so normal. But what happened is, so whatever happens in India, India followed it from the British, and what
Yes.
India followed, we have followed it, because in the Victorian culture was such that they used to even cover the legs of the sofas. If you go to a very Victorian house, even today, I
Yes.
have seen
The
it was
Victoria, the
considered
legs of
vulgar
the. Yeah.
to expose the legs of the sofa.
Yes.
So in that way, the same culture came into India when there was a British invasion, and that led to India following this culture, and then this thing was later followed by Nepal.
So it's very interesting when you talk about Nepal and people taking women taking their bath without a blouse in a public space, because I had written an article also about this, about the blouseless women of Bengal. When you said that in Nepal, women very very in public spaces they took their bath without their blouses. So even that is true. It holds true for India. And I will talk especially for Bengal, where I have been, into places that are not part of Kolkata, but in the village part of Bengal. And I have seen women without their blouses. But so blouses also was introduced by the British, actually, and the aristocrats of Bengal began making those puffed sleeve blouses. And that's when blouses happened, and we were made to feel ashamed about our breasts. So you're so right when you talk about, and I think gender exploitation has happened in a huge way when sex is discussed. And when you say about sex and super consciousness, I'm a huge believer of that, because also the Baul philosophy, in Bengal, they do talk about the entire consciousness of a human being is within your body. And the body does have the yoni, the body does have the vagina and the penis, and human procreation happens from there. So I so agree with you on that.
The sad thing what happened was, as time passed by, when we were the eastern side of civilization, there was a time when it was very rich, when it was very affluent. So the history is written, or the rules are made by those who have the money, who have the power. So when we
Absolutely.
were affluent, when we were thriving, we had our own culture, we had our own way of things, we had our own, and a very healthy and holistic lifestyle. But as there was this invasion, especially started after the British invasion. I don't know how true this letter is, but I've read a letter. I think it was written by Macaulay. I'm not sure. He has said that to make India poor, we have to destroy their. He's addressed the British Parliament, and he has said that to enslave India, we have to destroy their education system first, because there are so many rich people here. The culture is so rich, the civilization is so rich, and I have seen that the main crux of it is in their education system. So we have to first destroy their education system. This is a letter that he wrote to the British Parliament. He was a parliamentarian, and he came to India, and he saw the glory of India. He saw this rich India, he saw this thriving India, and then he said that to enslave it, we have to first destroy the education system. So that's how it started. When the British education came here, how was the British education designed? The British education was designed in such a way, it was designed to make clerks for Her Majesty the government.
Absolutely.
And that's what, otherwise we had a very, organic, very holistic education system that taught us the glory of our culture, the glory of our civilization, the Eastern civilization, the Gurukul system. There was spirituality in it, there was meditation, there was yoga, there was astronomy, there was science, there were all kinds of things. But all of it was destroyed. And we were so much closer to nature. All the gurukuls used to be in the forest. They used to be, and all the gurus, they used to be evolved souls. Somebody who has gone into themselves and and have a great level of intelligence, not only intelligence that has come through books and scriptures, but something through their own experience, through meditation, through yoga. So slowly that was destroyed, and then this education system was imposed upon us, which was making clerks, which was only designed to make obedient clerks for Her Majesty the government. And then the same education system came to Nepal also, because we always follow India. And that's how things were destroyed. And we were made to believe that we are inferior, that our culture is inferior, and we have to cover the legs of our sofas.
Neerav, I'm almost visualizing and seeing those sofas that I've seen in so many homes of my aunties, where they've had tie-ups, so white color, around them. You're so right. My goodness. Yes, you are. So, Neerav, I'd really also like to know about free love. What does that mean to you?
So, what is free love? Free love, if I really ask myself, the freedom to express your heart, the freedom to express the warmth in your heart, the freedom to relate with the other without, any boundaries, without any preconceived notions, and the freedom to receive, to have a welcoming heart to receive love. That is free love. I know you want to talk about sex, but even higher than that is this, because most of the times, when we are children, nobody teaches us how to love. Nobody teaches us how to share. Nobody teaches us how to nourish the heart. Everybody teaches us how to, earn more money, how to excel in class, how to leave the other behind, how to collect more. Nobody teaches us how to. And when is the heart happy? The heart is happy when it is allowed to receive love. The heart is happy, it celebrates when it is allowed to express love. The heart is nourished when it is allowed to share. But when we try to share our toys, we are told not to share it. We are told, like, no, you have to keep it for yourself. So in this way, the heart has constantly been, it is dying every day.
I agree with you, Neerav, fully on this. Completely agree with you.
So when I talk about free love that Osho was talking about, he was giving this freedom to the heart. He was giving this freedom to human beings and telling them that your basic nature is to love, and you will be happiest when you're allowed to love, when you receive love. So that is what Osho was talking about when he was talking about free love.
Yeah, and I also think that, we're all little children, and we're all little babies, actually. And I was listening to one of his speeches where he did talk about, why a child, when is in the mother's womb, is in that amniotic fluid all around it. There's a fluid around it, and they feel secure. And they are loved. They know the child is not eating on its own. The child is doing nothing on its own. And it's just the mother's energy that is keeping that child alive. And I think, it so resonates with me that when you come out, you're constantly looking for that security. And, the system around us breaks you in every possible way because of conditionings that we've had over millions and millions of invaders and, millions of years and years actually of people teaching you everything to do with the brain and not with the heart. And I think what is so amazing today is this, that Neerav, that you and me are having this conversation and people are talking about EQ, emotional quotient. People are talking about how it's so important to have your emotional intelligence at par with your intellectual, with your intelligence quotient in you, to be a successful leader, business person, a family man, a human being, in its totality. So this resonates so much with me, Neerav. And, also when I talk about sexual freedom, to me, I think it lies at the heart of human dignity, equality, and civil liberties, which should be there. I mean, sexual freedom has to be there. You should be allowed to choose who would be in your body.
First thing I would like to talk about this this great disparity that is there between EQ and IQ. So, in the West, what has happened today? And I'll also come back to your question about sexual freedom. See, today the West has become so developed. Materially, it has grown so much. The science there has grown so much. Life has become so comfortable. But look at the individual lives of people. There is so much of insomnia, there is so much of depression, there is so much of anxiety, so much of suicide happening. So in the beginning of the 20th century, it was said that if there is free education, if there is free health, if there is equal opportunities for employment, then everybody's going to be happy. There is not going to be any misery. But look at where we stand today. The world is taking a nosedive. We are on the brink of a global suicide. So why? Is because there was only growth of the intelligence quotient. There was only growth of the outer. There was only growth. People only focused on growing on the outside.
Say that again and again, Neerav. You're so right.
Yeah. So if there was a balance between both the growth, like, if you look at a human body, if my guru keeps on saying, Swami Anand Arun, who I live with and who I work with, he's an international meditation teacher and a great author, great speaker. So I've been living with him and I've lived under his mentorship. He constantly says, when you look at the human body, if only your hand grows and your legs doesn't grow, your neck doesn't grow, then it will look very ugly. So that's the same thing that has happened with the West. They've only grown on the outside, but they have given no importance to the inside. Similarly, to the East, what has happened is we have only focused on the inside for thousands of years. That's why we are so poor today. That's why there is so much we are lagging behind in so many things. So there needs to be a merger of these two, that there needs to be, and that is where Osho comes. That is where Osho's vision comes. That is where Osho's philosophy comes. An equal and balanced growth of the outer and the inner. Zorba the Buddha. So this is what I wanted to talk about.
It was fantastic, Neerav. I can go on and on talking to you, because to me, my podcast also will have a whole lot of other guests when I want to talk about sexual revolution that's really being witnessed, not just the ability for a woman to go ahead and buy the contraceptive pill like an OTC drug, because again, there is a huge marketing ploy of pharmaceutical companies who would want to sell more and more without telling the woman what are the consequences of that. That is one part where sexual liberation can be seen, that a woman can go ahead and buy her pill and condoms are now available. But we are talking about sexual liberation at a very, very deep level, and, at a level where you can choose who is with you. And of course, like you said, sex and consciousness, they are completely intertwined. I mean, that's my philosophy too. And it was wonderful talking to you. And I hope that we meet soon. And it's my first podcast for all the listeners for Nepal. I definitely would hope to bring in more people from Nepal. And I will ask you, Neerav, for anybody who's doing something different. The art of Nepal, is something, the watercolors that I've seen, the musicians from Nepal, they're so close to my heart. Right now, when I'm talking to you, I'm transported into those little, quaint cafes that I've gone into, and people are naturally talented there. And so if you know anyone, please ask them to get in touch with me. I would love to host them on my podcast, because in my heart...
Definitely.
Yes, in my heart, I'm also a little bit of Nepali. I grew up, yes, because I understand the language, every word of it. I don't speak it with the fluency that I did earlier, but I understand every word of Nepali. And thank you, Neerav. This was amazing. And I wish you a lot of success. And also for the listeners, Neerav is extremely handsome with an amazing smile. So,
Thank you.
So I have to stop myself from not crushing badly on him,
But you're allowed to do that.
Oh. All right.
We were talking about sexual freedom. We were talking about free love, so you're allowed to crush on me.
I needed to get the permission. So yes, thank you.
Just before we go, Mohua, there's one thing that I would like to say, because you were talking so much about sexual freedom. If you allow me.
Yes, please.
So I just want to say that, living with Osho for so many years, living in a commune, for so many years. I have come to a place, where so people keep asking me, so what have you learned by staying at an Osho commune? What is it that, what did you get from it? There are so many things, but one thing that is also very important is that we stopped judging people through the glasses of sexuality, and I feel myself, I think that it's such a healthy place to be in, because I still remember, when I myself, when I was talking with my friends, and we would definitely sometimes we would slut shame somebody, or we would, say that, oh, this guy has a lot of sex, or this girl is so, all those things. Now I no more have those eyes. I try to find them, but I saw that by living here for 16 years, those glasses have disappeared. So I just want to say that none of us are entitled to judge anybody for their sexual choice, and that, this particular subject, this particular aspect, if we accept it, if we embrace it, and if we worship it, actually, because it gives life, it is very divine. If we worship it, and if we look at it from a very healthy point of view, it can bear beautiful flowers. It can bear beautiful creations. That's why Osho was saying sex to superconsciousness. Great intelligence can come from sexual liberty. Great intelligence can come if you accept your sexual energy and if you embrace it. There is so much that we can talk about this. I just wanted to say
I can go on and on, Neerav. And what you've said is going to stay back with me is the eyes. That, your eyes changed and you started viewing the world differently. And this will stay back with me because, when you're talking to me, I'm almost choking up, because to me, I also believe that the divinity in a sexual energy exchange. Of course, there are a lot of people who would say that it is just like any other energy. And I think divinity also comes with its own chains, where you say that, no, it has to be one person and not multiple people. And there is a whole lot of people who also talk about polyamory. They talk about, not being in a monogamous relationship. And so there are different views and different thoughts. And I'm not an expert to talk on all of that. But with my podcast, I definitely get to delve, into the minds of people who've been following and walking their talk. So you leave me with a very heart filled with little flowers that's growing by the lake. And I am walking right now in Kathmandu, in those streets, and I am, transported to Nepal. And thank you so much, Neerav. You're a great speaker.
You're welcome to come here any day.
I am going to come.
I know that your heart is in Nepal. You feel the Nepali spirit. You feel the Nepali heart. You're always welcome to come to our commune. It's called Osho Tapoban International. It's a beautiful place in the hills with lots of forest. Even now, we are inside a fog as I talk to you, and very beautiful people that live here. You will, if you really want to taste the fragrance of Osho, if you really want to taste the salt of Osho's ocean, then this is definitely the place that you can come here and see happy people, with very less, we don't have bank balances, we don't have big houses, but really good hearts and celebrating people. If you really want to see that, you should, and you're always welcome to come to Osho Tapoban.
Absolutely. I am going to take you up on this. I'm just waiting for things to settle a bit. And I think from September, everything will open up and I will fix up to be there. I think my New Year's is going to be dedicated to doing something very, very different this year. And I will take you up on that. Thank you so much for being on today's episode. And you are a wonderful speaker. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Mohua. Thank you so much.
To you, our dearest listeners, you can find us on your favorite streaming services. Find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, and of course, all other major streaming services. With loads of love, we are Moody Mo Awaaz Podcast, where Hatke is hot.